All right, so for all of my groups that are on a remote day today, so either B and C group if you're watching this hopefully on Tuesday, or the A group if you're watching this on Wednesday. This is just going to be a short video where I'm going to explain some of the basics of the writing that we're going to eventually elaborate on for class. But for the specific Never Let Me Go test, where I told you you're going to have to write um, two short essays out of five possible prompt choices, I wanted to go over just some basic nuts and bolts of writing for this class. So I guess the best way to start it is to actually show you the rubric that is used on the AP test. So last year, actually a couple years ago, the College Board changed their overall rubric. It used to be on a 9-point writing rubric. So each of the three essays that you would write for the AP test would get evaluated based on this 9-point writing rubric. And it was basically kind of more of a holistic rubric, meaning they would read it and they would say, oh, this essay is pretty good. That looks like it should be an 8. Or they would read an essay and say, this is actually not very good. This is more like a 2. So the rubric that they ended up changing to more closely resembles the one on the screen right now. And if you disregard the little multipliers here and you just look at the numbers on top, the numbers all the way over to the right will add up to 6. So the AP now uses a rubric that only assesses or evaluates your essay based on 6 points. So what this helps us do as we kind of try to become better writers and prepare, not only for the AP test, but for writing at hopefully the collegiate level, is it lets us understand what's important or most important about writing. So the first thing you should notice is that the thesis is something that you either get a point for or you don't get a point for. Pretty much if you have a successful thesis, you're going to earn at least a 1 on your AP essay. We translate this into class basically by saying that on any piece of writing we do, you're going to get beaucoup points based on how well you can write a thesis. So you can kind of just see if you look at the language here, and you're free to pause it if you want to look more closely if I go too quickly. Ways you don't get a point is if you don't have a thesis, your thesis only restates a prompt, your thesis provides a summary, or it does not respond to the prompt. All right. To get a thesis point on the AP test and most of our assignments that we will do, it says your thesis has to respond to a prompt, it has to be defensible, it has to establish a line of reasoning. So some of that language can be a little bit confusing. There are 3 things that I ask you to pay attention to when you write a thesis statement in this class. Now, because today I'm going to be talking to you not necessarily about writing an entire essay, we'll get into that later, but I'm going to talk to you about how to write what we call in this class an analysis paragraph. Now, if you had me for Honors English 2, this might kind of sound vaguely familiar. An analysis paragraph is just to say if instead of assigning an entire essay, I have you compact that down into, let's say, a 1 to a half of a page paragraph where you can really elaborate and give me a full picture of an analysis of a question. So in my class and in most other classes, you might have heard this, the thesis statement requires 3 things and 3 things only. All right. And this is more for the analysis paragraph. We say this would all go into like the main topic sentence. In an essay, this would be the things that you would need in an introduction, not an entire thesis statement. So, when we write an analysis paragraph, rather than having separate paragraphs, an intro, body paragraph, and then conclusions, we kind of just loop it all into one. And so your thesis statement, called your topic sentence, needs to include the title and the author of the work that you are analyzing. So in your case, when you guys work on this for your little essay portion of the test, it'll be Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. A little bit of context, which basically just means frame what you're talking about. Okay, so in Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro, a novel that explores the question of humanity through the use of science fiction and clones. So there's my context or my summary. And then some type of argumentative statement based on the question or prompt. So when you're presented with these 5 different options, your thesis or your topic sentence should answer or respond to the prompt. And the reason I say this point right here, it should be argumentative, is because your thesis is always something you must be able to defend. Meaning, if you put it out there, it's based on an opinion, it's not based on a fact, and you have to prove it. And that's one of the most important features of a thesis statement. Okay. So, on any rubric, you'll see that the thesis statement matters. The biggest amount of points that you can earn on the AP test, and also anytime we have one of these assignments, including when I evaluate your test and read your essays, comes with the evidence and commentary. This just means if you put something out there and you say, Ruth is the biggest symbol of hope in the novel Never Let Me Go. If that's going to be your defensible thesis, which that's an incomplete thesis, by the way, because you have to explain why. But if that was going to be your opinion you threw out there, then the rest of your analysis paragraph or essay should develop, give examples, explain, and analyze that statement. So again, you can always pause this and kind of see what's the difference between only getting like a point for evidence and commentary, and what's the difference between getting all the points, which would be out of 4. Okay. And then finally, the last thing that they look for on the AP test, and again, this one is a little bit, especially because it's a test question you guys are going to be writing about. I'm not going to look at this as heavily, but we call this the sophistication point. And I just wanted to talk about this because we're already introducing kind of the AP rubric. So a sophistication point is something that you get that basically demonstrates not only sophistication of writing, which would mean you have a pretty good handle on punctuation and grammar. You have an appropriate use of vocabulary, so not elevated, meaning you sound like a thesaurus, but just an appropriate use. You know how to choose the right words for what you're talking about. But it also means a sophistication of thought, meaning that your ideas that you present aren't necessarily the easy ones. You didn't just take oh, yeah, it's going to ask me about protagonists. I'm going to choose something really easy. But you might have a more sophisticated idea you want to discuss. All right. Ruth is a Christ figure would be an example of, whoa, that's something that's a little bit out there. It's a little bit unique and you have to defend it. And so you could go on talking about that, and that might earn you that sophistication point. But like I said, on your test that you're going to be writing for, I am not going to be necessarily looking at your sophistication. So, a basic outline, I'm going to choose 2 assignments that I gave last year for the AP students towards the end of the year. One thing I would probably pause and take note of what's in the shaded box, because when you do have to write your 2 essay questions over this test, this is the structure that I'm going to ask you to use. So instead of talking about how to write a full and complete essay, because I do not want your hand to hurt and I don't want you to think that on your essay questions for this test, you have to be writing 4 pages, I'm asking for paragraphs. All right. And if you can kind of see, I'll go up here. Even though it's about the specific assignment, you can see my last question or my last statement says, a template has been provided for your convenience. No response should be fewer than 14 well-developed sentences. So if you're someone that needs that, how long should this be, the thing that I'm writing for, especially on this essay test, 15 sentences is a good goal to shoot for. Now, I wouldn't count sentences, but that's based, of course, on this analysis paragraph format. So an analysis paragraph has a topic sentence. It begins with a topic sentence. This includes the title and author and a response to the prompt or the question. The next thing that it does, if you think about your major points, kind of like topic sentences of your body paragraphs, you're going to have 3 points. You could also have 2. 3 is not a set in stone number. Definitely should have more than 1, though, that develop or respond to your prompt in a specific way and help to build the argument. Each of those points then gets elaboration. Elaboration is just a fancy word for you should have some quotes. Okay, so on your essay test, when you guys do this tomorrow, you will have your books with you, because I expect that you should be able to either refer to specific examples, meaning you should be able to paraphrase them in chapter 23 when Kathy's driving, to Norfolk after learning of Tommy's death or something like that. So you should have that, or actual quotes that you can use. Um, you don't just stop your elaboration by having a quote, though. If you notice, it says for the second part of this, um, the elaboration includes direct examples that support the point and an explanation that develops the topic sentence. So I'll show you an example of this in a minute so you know what I'm specifically talking about. Each of your analysis paragraphs should also end with a concluding sentence. The biggest no-no for this is I do not want your concluding sentence to be just a copy and paste or kind of a parroting of what you had for your first sentence. So if we kind of, again, I would make sure you have this shaded box written down in your notes and you can always pause. But let's go look at this is a student that wrote a response to the following prompt, and this was based on a poem. Based on the dramatic narrative poem Home Burial, analyze and explain how Robert Frost uses poetic devices to show the complex relationship of the couple and their inability to communicate with one another. So if you have no idea what this is talking about, it's basically saying, hey, this is a poem about a couple that doesn't get along anymore. Explain how the poet lets us know they don't get along anymore. So the first thing when I look back to my structure is this they should have a topic sentence. So our first sentence, in his poem Home Burial, Robert Frost reveals through the use of symbolism, repetition, and rhythm to show the complex relationship between the couple and their inability to communicate with one another. So this one is a little repeaty for me. They basically kind of restated the prompt, but at least you could say it's arguable because they said that they cannot communicate with one another. Again, it's a little too repeaty for me, but that's, just for the sake of you can see this is what a topic sentence looks like. All right, so the next thing that this person should have, and again, it should be a major point, meaning support something that you just said. You just told me these people can't communicate, so you need to give me a reason and you need to elaborate on that. So that's what I'm looking for next. So after the highlighted part, we see through the entirety of the poem, he uses the stairs as a way to show the couple going through their grief. There's my major point. This person's going to pick out one specific example, the use of the stairs in this poem, and talk about how that gives them grief, that shows their grief, which is why they can't talk to one another. The narrator describes the man being lower on the staircase than his wife. And then we have a quote inserted here. This is a really good job because now I know that this person has started to elaborate. They're not just going to say, the author uses the stairs to show that they can't communicate and then move on. This person is going to explain their thought process of why the stairs are important. The stairs are a symbol of a journey for both of them, and they also serve as a symbol to indicate the distance and separation between them. They're both always on different levels in the staircase, emphasizing that they're at different points of their grief. So I'm going to highlight this. This section that I just read through right here, this is an example of how the person used a major point and then elaborated on that major point. So the next section would be this same structure, which is like a mini body paragraph, again, because you need to at least have two major points, if not three. So this is just one example, and you don't need to read the whole thing. I just wanted you to see it in practice. This person's entire response fits on a page. So when you guys respond to two of your essay questions out of the five, you are totally fine if your response looks like this. All right, if you type it up and it's like this, or maybe it's a little bit shorter, maybe a little bit longer, that's okay. I just don't want you to think you're writing a full-on essay. All right, you can see this is another example. There's a prompt on here. Again, if you feel like pausing the video, you can read through the prompt. And then, oh, this person didn't even put this is just the assignment page. I was going to say, I don't have anything here. So to make this make sense for you, let's look at an example of a prompt that I could specifically give you. I could give you something like this. Many works of literature use the hero's journey as a major part of structuring the plot and character development. So already you know if you choose this essay question, you're going to be writing about the hero's journey. Spoiler, this is not a question for tomorrow, but this is a possible essay topic if you ever choose to write your paper on this. The use of this structure not only helps develop the action, but it also allows for the reader to better understand the complex characters and their motivations, in addition to also developing overall themes based on how their journeys end. Okay, so that's just some background on what heroes' journeys do. We know that when a hero or a person goes somewhere, they're on a quest, they're looking for something. So it's basically saying lots of books have people that go places in order to find something or for a purpose. So here's your actual question. For Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go, choose a character that you believe follows the structure and analyze the purpose of their journey and how it develops the meaning of the work as a whole. So if we do this part together, let's just say we're going to write a thesis statement, or for an analysis paragraph, a topic sentence. We might come up with something like this. In Kazuo Ishiguro's Never Let Me Go, a book about clones struggling with, let's do questions of their own humanity. And we'll just say, for the sake of things, we'll choose Ruth. Ruth exemplifies, and I'm sorry, but I'm really doing this on the fly with you guys, so if it's not the best, that's fine. The structure and development of the hero's journey. So we know that from reading How to Read Literature Like a Professor and studying the hero's journey sophomore year, when the hero goes somewhere, they're usually for a purpose. So in order for me to finish up this thesis, I've got my title and author, and I've got my context. Now I need to actually put my opinion out there, put my arguable statement. I can't just say Ruth is a character that does this and have that be my entire argument. I have to explain what I think Ruth is looking for. So I can continue my thesis, because thesis statements don't have to be a single sentence. And I might say something like, Ruth's entire, or let's say during Ruth's entire life, she is a symbol of hope for others, and her purpose is to find her true identity. Now, I admit this is a little cliche. It's a little bit not vague, but it's just kind of, oh, okay, I've seen this somewhere before. But now at least you know this is what a thesis could look like. I've answered the prompt. You know what I'm going to talk about. And then for the rest of my essay, or the rest of my analysis paragraph, I need 2 to 3 examples that show me, number one, how she's a symbol of hope, and maybe number 2, how this shows a search for her identity. So I might talk about, as far as the symbol of hope, how she has a rich imagination, and I might use some different examples of imaginary things or games that she comes up with. I might even use something, if I'm talking about her true identity and I want that to make sense, I might even talk about the idea of her dream future and how she's really descriptive at the cottages of having this dream future, meaning she has hope for a life other than what's been prescribed for her. But I might also talk about the fact that this is her really trying to figure out who she is. All right. I might also go with the Norfolk trip and use that as an example to show how she, more than anybody, went out to look for her possible. And I might talk about how she had hope that she would find her parent clone, right? The person that she came from, and how what she would find out from that was really who she really was. So again, this is a harder question than the one I'm going to give you tomorrow. The ones I'm going to give you tomorrow are much more straightforward and more of a, I ask a question, you give an answer one. But I just wanted you guys to see that this is how this writing should be structured. So things to take away from this video. Number 1 would be this shaded box with the notes. Okay. Number 2 would be this little gentle reminder of what goes in a thesis statement right here. And the last thing I'll show you is, this is essentially, it's the same thing 4 times because I print on small pieces of paper, but this is the rubric that I use to evaluate your analysis paragraph questions. So if I'm going to count each response that you have as 35 points, this is where those points would come from. Now don't get nervous. I'm not going to count each as 35 points. I might just have it and have each of your responses add up to 35 points, but I just wanted to be able to see. So if you want to read through this, you can pause it. If you have any questions, let me know. But otherwise, you guys will see the post go up for these little essays that you'll write, these little essay questions. And you're going to answer again 2 out of the 5, open book for Never Let Me Go.